All right, welcome back, Inspired Leaders. I am so excited for our conversation as I have the wonderful and brilliant Dr. Layne Dillard with me. We've been connected on social media, but it's been phenomenal to learn more about her work, and all the impact that she's creating, not only on the campus level, but also with educators all over the country. And with that, Layne, thank you so much for being on Inspired to Lead.
Oh, thank you so much, Josh. I'm so excited to be here, and it's such an honor. You do great work.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And I can say the same for you. And I just want you to have an opportunity to share a little bit about yourself, about your educational and leadership journey. So we just share the many things that you've done over the years.
Absolutely. So I am not your typical educator where you say, hey, I was little and this is what I wanted to do when I grew up. That's really not what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a news broadcaster. And I know you're hearing this Southern accent right now and you're like, man, good choice. You didn't go that direction. But I actually did that for a while. And I'm like, but while I was doing it, I was like, I just felt like there was this calling on my life to be in education. And man, I fought it, but I did it anyway. And I can tell you, I can't think of anything better to do with your life than to dedicate it to the future. And that's what you do when you do education. But I started out as a teacher. I taught middle school and I taught English and history and I loved it. But I actually knew within the first year that I wanted to be a principal. Like that's what I wanted to do. And so I got my first principal's job when I was 29 years old and I was at an alternative school. And I remember the superintendent when he was interviewing me saying, Layne, what are you going to do with an 18-year-old person who's been arrested? And you're this 29-year-old girl. Like, are they going to listen to you? And I remember looking right back at him and saying, look, the one thing I know is this: leadership's not about age. It's not about your gender. It's about respect and relationships. And I can do that. So I think I got this. And I went home and thought, oh, Lord, I hope at 29 years old, I can control some 18-year-old who's been arrested. So I loved it. It was a great place to start because it really kind of shaped my vision toward leadership, because I started with the kids who needed the absolute most help. And I realized, you know what? They're not bad kids. They just make bad choices. And when I can make that paradigm shift of the way we look at kids and the way they do things, it's really just kind of been the filter I looked at everything with for the rest of my journey. And I was a principal for about 18 years, and middle school and elementary school, as well as alternative school. And now I'm with the State Department and I work in school improvement. And my last piece of my school journey before I went to the state was to do a turnaround out of school. We had an F on the state report card and we brought that up to a B. We had 100% of our third graders at reading level. And that was with about, I think we were 92% poverty. And so really just took those things I learned there. And that's what I do with the state now, with the state of Alabama. I work with the State Department and I go in and I work with schools who are either trying to go from good to great or from, oh my gosh, we have problems and we need help. And they're trying to go from an F to an A or a B as well. So that's what I do.
Wow. That's such a beautiful story. And, we got connected through and I've gotten to see some of the work that you've done because you had a brilliant YouTube video that you got to show kind of that student-centered learning environment. And I know there were a lot of connections between my new book with Charlie Peck, The Language of Behavior, and some of the work that you've done. But in regards to the things that you've put together for creating that environment, for that student-centered learning environment, can you just share with folks, some of the hardships you had and why you started to construct this specific environment for your students?
Yeah, absolutely. When I came to the school, we were already struggling, and I had been there a year and we were working really hard. I mean, we were already putting in a ton of hard work. I was already starting to see some changes, and I was starting, with culture and all the things they tell you to do. Like I'd already been a principal a while, like 10 years before I got there, and I'm like, we're going to start with the culture. We're going to do data, and I was seeing these shifts, but I wasn't seeing it at the rate that it needed to happen. And I realized at that point, I think I'm still making a lot of decisions based on what's best for the adults in the building or based on what I know works with adults. And it was just kind of like, you know what, Layne, we're going to take this whole thing and we're just fixing to shift everything. And everything we do is going to be based on what's best for the child. I hear people say that a lot, but I think when you really do it, you realize it's a lot of hard work. I mean, you have to really shift the way you do almost everything. But it's the most amazing shift. Like once you get there, once you really start making decisions that way and you start seeing all these changes, when you realize that your leadership has to be based on the kids, that engagement and all that that's going on within the classroom is really built around the kids. But then we're not looking at data as numbers. We're looking at this data as our children. I mean, like, and then just your culture. What are we doing with our culture so that we are actually saying, I don't want this to just be a fun place to be. I want this to be a student-centered learning culture. And when I say that, I mean, we want kids to be able to learn here. We want them to be able to fit here. And if you're going to belong here and you're going to be here, and that's how you get to learn here. And so that whole shift went that direction. I'm going to tell you, that's a big shift for leaders. When I talk to them about that, when I go in schools and work with leaders now, and we have these conversations, I'm like, this is going to be a paradigm shift that some adults are going to like, some adults are not going to like, and you're going to have to lead that. And I'm going to tell you, I honestly think that's the hardest part of the process is getting adults to, I don't really like the word buy-in, to own a student-centered culture, that we are here for them and we're not here for us. And I don't mean that you neglect the teachers. I don't mean that at all, because actually you have to build more relationships with them to be able to pull that part off than anything you're ever going to do. But to really just get them to understand that process, to learn it, and then to embrace it, so that they start to have that same lens, that they don't see things as students are a problem, but behavior's a problem. Or this child can't learn, but this technique doesn't work for teaching this child. That whole process is it literally is a process. And so I think that's probably the biggest piece of that whole thing.
Yeah, Layne, I want to talk about your framework. I know you've constructed something called the LEAD framework, and
Mhm.
I'm assuming this is helping with changing that culture to make it more of a student-centered learning environment. So, will you just kind of outline what that framework looks like for our leaders?
Yeah, so I've had so many people since we did our big, shift from an F to a B and going into my schools that I go into right now. Like, I really wanted to sit down and just go, what did we do? What was the magic? Because I know what was working. I know what happened, and everybody in that building knows how this worked and what we did, and just how I don't even use the word magical, but it did feel that way. Like, how do we do this? And we were so happy, and it just felt like a family. And so I sat down and I thought, I've got to think of each component. And when I did that, it just really fell into the word lead, LEAD, like it's leadership and vision. Like, and everything is built on the, like, if you see, like I made a little, like, like a framework for it, it's student centered in the middle, and then everything is around it. And so there's this student centered leadership. The leadership and vision has to be built around students. It can't be built around a report card score. When you start building your culture around results, you have by default messed up, because the results should be just that, results. They cannot be a why. They cannot be what the vision and the goal is. But when you set that vision and goal, that you're setting that out there to go, we're going to make this a place where students want to come. We're going to make this a place where students can learn. And above all, that our vision is going to be one that absolutely revolves around the student. So that leadership piece and that vision piece has got to be set by the leader. The E in that is engaged learning and engaged instruction. Man, I see a lot of people in classrooms that just have worksheets or they're doing lectures, and they're not really stopping to think everything that I do should involve an engaged learner. Like, if they're not engaging with the material, if they're not engaging with what we're doing, they're not actually learning. They may be memorizing some things, but they're not actually getting up. When we look at, like, I don't know, Bloom's taxonomy, we're never going to get to the top of that if we don't have some really good engagement. The A, and that's just accountability and data, and data driven improvement. You have got to use your data like blood work. I mean, you've got to look at it like blood work for every single child. And what kind of thing are we doing to make sure that we get them where they need to be? The data can't be punitive. It doesn't need to be personal. That's why I say it's like blood work, just because blood work's not personal, it just is what it is. And so when we can start to look at it that way, instead of looking at it like, oh, you're a good teacher, your data looks good, or oh, you're a bad teacher because your data looks bad. No, that is so not what this is for. This is just a place for us to go, this is feedback. Is what we're doing working, or is what we're doing not working? What do we need to change? What do we need to continue? So that's a huge piece of that student-centered part, because you have to look at it by each child and not just like a class. And then the D is just a development of a positive culture and a community. And honestly, man, that's really, you just can't do it without that piece at all. But all those other things are making that. Like, so I hear people talk about culture and they think it's separate. Everything I just said is culture. Like the leadership's the culture, the engaged learning is the culture, the data is the culture. So everything is that, but also looking at things just to go, hey, what can we do within this culture so that it really is a place where students can learn?
Okay, let's talk about that more. I want to go a little bit further. So, creating that environment, right, for our staff and for our students
Mhm.
in that ecosystem, that school ecosystem. So, what were some things that you put in place as the principal, as a leader, to kind of, well, one, probably looking at assessing the environment and saying, okay, these are the changes needed to make sure that we are going toward a plan of school improvement.
You know, I remember I had, we had gone to the mountains. I don't know, like, and when I say the mountains, I don't mean like Colorado, like your mountains. I mean like the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee, okay?
Sure.
I mean like mountains where you don't see like rock, you know? Okay, so anyway, I had gone to the mountains and there's actually like an aquarium up there. And I remember I was in that aquarium that day and I was looking around. I was with my kids. I have 3 kids and I was with them and I was looking around. I was thinking, here we are in the Smoky Mountains in an aquarium. Like I'm looking at a shark and, jellyfish and all kinds of stuff. And it really was like this moment when I thought, what's so cool is if you'll build the environment right, if you'll have the ecosystem right, you can have a shark in the mountains. You can have anything you want if you've built the environment around the species that's going to be there. And I went back to school and I was talking to my teachers and I said, guys, I was in the mountains and I was just thinking about this. All this stuff we're trying to do. Let's think about this for a minute. What are we trying to build? And we're just literally going to build this like it's an aquarium in the mountains. I mean, this place is going to be an ecosystem that's literally built around students. So what does that look like? And we started just talking about what that really would look like. So we said, let's have assembly every morning. Let's start together. Let's don't even start our day with an announcement over the intercom. Let's just pile in wherever we can pile in. We're a small school, so we could fit in the lunchroom. Well, we were packed, but we could fit in the lunchroom. I don't care if I had 4,000 kids. I think we would get on the football field or in the gym or whatever we had to do. We started every day in assembly. And when we did that, and then one of the cool things is when we went into the lunchroom, guess who was there? Every cafeteria worker, our custodians. I mean, everybody came in. And the adults were kind of on the perimeter and the kids are all on seats. And we became a little community every single morning. We had rituals and routines and we celebrated birthdays and we sang the national anthem and we did all kinds of things. We celebrated anything that we could possibly celebrate. We celebrated in the mornings. If somebody had grown a lot academically, we celebrated growth. If somebody had met a personal goal, if it was a teacher or anything, we celebrated that in the morning. It took 6 minutes. We did it every day. And in that 6 minutes, what we did was we just set the weather. Now we can walk in a classroom, and even if a child has had a bad morning or, like I said, I worked in a lot of poverty. Let's just say somebody, didn't even sleep in their home the night before, or maybe got incarcerated the night before. That wasn't unusual either. And so when those kinds of things happen, but when we can start that day in the morning and we can say, hey, we're a family and we're here together. And regardless of what's happened, it's going to be a good day. And then we can go on to class. That's how we started. And we had a chant we said every morning. The kids actually are the ones who came up with it with our counselor, Anna Stanley. She was fantastic. And it was, I am capable. I am loved. I belong. I got this. And that's how we started every single day with that chant. And they went to class. And then we also, we decided that something else that we wanted to do was we wanted to teach our students a lot of personal responsibility. I love to give them things, but I also want them to earn things. And that was a big piece of us is we want to teach kids that if they work hard, because hard work's just that great equalizer in life, how can we teach them that? And so we started where they wear badges, they clock in every day, they do all this stuff. We did a whole simulated workforce piece with it. And so because we said if the environment we want is ownership with our teachers and with our kids to own their learning, to own their behaviors, to own what they do, then we're going to have this accountability system that goes along with it. And so they could earn their way into an arcade. And it was so cool. We had an arcade. And when I say an arcade, like y'all, I mean, I was 10 and 85. So like, I mean, I had Pac-Man, we had everything. We had the best black lights. I mean, I felt like I was at the skating rink. It was awesome. And so the kids could earn their way and they earned their points and their paychecks to get into that and got to go every week and participate in that arcade. And you know how we knew to do that? we asked them what they wanted. What would you like? I love an arcade. One of the teachers said, "Can we do that?" I'm like, "I don't know why not if we don't use public funds." So we had lots of donations and things, and that's how we did it. And it was like the coolest place ever. And I miss my arcade so bad because I went every single day. I loved it.
Yeah, I want to go to school with an arcade. That's
Mhm.
brilliant. That's how I grew up too. All right, so well, let's dive into that a little bit more because that sounds very intriguing and it's kind of perked my interest. So, if someone's like, "Yes, I need a system to be implemented into my campus," and maybe their students are looking at something similar, or maybe they suggested something like an arcade. What did that simulated workforce look like, and how did you get it off the ground to make it so it was implemented campus wide?
Okay, so I am a dreamer and I'm very visionary. And that means that I need someone around who's really good with a spreadsheet because that's probably not me. Um, I've learned how to do them, but that is not going to be my. So, and I say that to say this, you got to know the strengths of everybody in your building. You have got to know their strengths. Somebody in your building is an Excel guru, whether you know it or not. And those people that do that love it. I mean, they love it. So I had a fantastic teacher, Ashley Camp, who was just like our Excel guru. And I start telling her what I want to build out. And she's like, "Oh, absolutely. This can be done." Now, she will tell you it was not easy, but we basically used QR codes on badges, clicked in, clicked in. The kids, when they would walk in the morning, they would click in, they would say, "I'm here." They'd get 5 points. It fed it off to this Excel spreadsheet. And then they got their 5 points. The only way that you have to lose points is if you have to leave the classroom or if you aren't behaving correctly. Everything was soft skill related, though. This was never about academics. It bled into academics because it affected it so much. If you're in the classroom, you can actually learn. So if you walk out, you got to clock out, and when you clock out, you lose a point. So those points accumulate that week, and we would print out a paycheck and it literally looked like a payroll paycheck and it had a stub at the bottom and it had every time stamped of every time they did anything, had to walk out or I got it. I wasn't being, respectful to my friends or my teacher or whatever it was on there. They saw what they lost their points for. And they wanted to get those points. It also actually really helped us with attendance too, because I need
Mhm.
you to bring that excuse. So if you do miss, if you'll just bring me an excuse, then you can get 3 points back. So, see, it was the incentive. Hey, I couldn't be here. I don't want you to come sick. You're going to get 3 of your points back. But then at the end of the week, they could take that. Like you could have up to 25 minutes, and those 25 points, that $25 on that. That was how you got into the arcade. Another thing we really loved with that is we got to teach them fiscal responsibility because they could have savings accounts and they could say, "Hey, I want to bank some of this up." And I love to give my kids yearbooks. Like I realized working in high poverty schools that a lot of children never had a yearbook. And I love my old yearbooks. I love to go back and look at those things. And so I was like, I know we can't do this every year, but I would like to at least every 2 or 3 years be able to give them a yearbook. So I found a sponsor that would do that for us, but I didn't give it to them. If you want to save money, you save it from that check you get. And then at the end, when you've saved your money and it had some compounding interest, because we wanted to teach them that too, hey, this money's worth more if you save it than it is if you spend it. Then you could get your yearbook at the end of the year. And, then if you didn't save your money and you didn't get the yearbook, you made that choice. But, that's a life choice. I mean, that's what we do as adults. Do you want to spend it today or do you want to have it for something tomorrow? And so we just really wanted to instill in them that, they could have the things they want in life, but you've got to make good choices and you control that through your actions. And that's why everything was soft skill oriented to get into the arcade and to do those types of things.
Yeah, that's a brilliant idea. Just as far as teaching them life skills, things like you said that they're going to need to know as an adult, and you're going to get a payday, and you're going to get taxes taken off or deductions
Now,
or
I
whatever you
did
want to
not
call
tax
it.
them. Fairness, I didn't do that to them. I didn't want to burst their bubble. They can find that out when they get their first job. I didn't do that.
25% gets right back to my
No,
pocket. No.
they got to keep all of it, every bit of it.
No, I love the concept. And so, obviously, at the end of the conversation, we're going to talk about how you can get in contact with Layne. So if this is something that you want more information, she, of course, would be a brilliant resource for that. You had talked about alternative schools and at-risk students. I wanted to touch on that because I know, you've talked about being a visionary, being creative. I'm curious, when you're a principal of that setting and some of the student behaviors that you saw might have been intense, might have been larger than what you might see at a typical school. What were some changes and alternative means did you kind of tap into to change that school culture, that ecosystem, to make it the way that you wanted?
Well, when I got hired there, had only been teaching about, I guess, about 5 years when I walked into the alternative setting. And the principal, it was going to be a brand new, our district had never had this before. So it was brand new off the ground. And they had called and said, "Hey, Layne, we heard you're interested in coming here. Do you want to interview?" And I said, "Yeah." So I went and interviewed, and I made it very clear, if this is going to be a place where we stick children in cubicles and we treat them as though they've, the life is over at, 13 to 18, however old they were, because we had seventh grade through 12th grade. Um, I don't want to be here. I only want to be here if we're interested in helping them actually reform. I don't know if that's the word I'm even looking for. Just help them actually get on track and realize that
Yeah.
they can make it and do better in school. I don't know if we were reforming anyone, but
Well,
I mean,
learning
but
the correct behaviors.
yeah, yeah, reforming behaviors. I don't, anyway. So, but I want to be here if you're going to let me do some things that are really, really odd and innovative. And I know that's going to be a stretch for some people. But are you going to be okay if I take them on field trips? And are you going to be okay if we do some things? And they were like, "That's what we want." I said, "Are you sure that's what you want?" And, it took a little bit of them seeing that they weren't going to burn the place down. I mean, they had to see that. But I'm serious. There were some thought processes that were just like, no, they did something wrong and they are not to. And I'm like, guess that's just, do we want them to be that the way forever? If not, we have to do things differently. So I think we started little, just like we were sitting right on the edge of the wildlife refuge, which is kind of where I live now. And so I went and worked with the wildlife refuge and said, "Is there something we can do, like just working with the animals or doing some things out here?" And they were like, "Yeah, we need bluebird boxes because we don't have a lot of bluebirds in this area anymore. Can y'all build those?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I think so." And so we were sitting on the district site, like we were at the school district, like that's where our school was. We were sitting at the central office. And so we had maintenance there and the woodworking shop. And I was like, "Can y'all do this with us?" So it was just little things like that. So they started investing in the kids. And then it was just like, "Hey, we're going to have an ice cream party," because a lot of them had maybe not even had homemade ice cream. And so we started inviting in the adults to see that these kids are normal kids that made bad choices or made some choice they shouldn't have made. Because typically at the alternative school, it's drugs, alcohol, weapons, or threats. I mean, that's typically who I would get. I might get like a habitual just behavior issue, but typically it revolved around those things. And so we just started with that. And really, I just had to change the adults' minds. The kids were all for it, but we just let them know up front, "Hey, look, we're giving you another chance, and we're giving you an opportunity to show everybody else that, because I know you're not a bad kid, but they need to see that you're not a bad kid. You just made a bad choice." And so even after I was at the alternative school 7 years, I left. And then when I went back to my school, like the last school I was at for those 8 years, they brought the alternative school back to me. So even on my regular school campus that I'm telling you about, I had the alternative school. I said, I felt like I was at The Price is Right and I had spun the wheel. You did. Your parting gift is, no matter where you go, the alternative school is going to go with you. So anyway, but I loved them. I mean, I did. I love those kids. I love kids. I mean, they're just regular kids. I mean, that was my whole point. Was people would say, what's a typical alternative school kid?" I'm like, anybody, because we had everybody from the valedictorian to the homeless child, So it was everybody and everybody in between. So really it was still that same focus. Like I said, I learned that there and took it into regular school. Just that we treat everybody with respect. We give them the place to feel like they belong. We let them know we're sorry they're here. I mean, I'm sorry that you're not with your regular, typical peers, but while you're here, we're going to work on things. And we had leadership every single day. It was after lunch. We put this leadership class in, and I would have bankers and I mean, everybody come in and talk to them. We would have welders. We would have all these different careers and different people come in and talk to them just about how important it was for them to stay in school or for them to, get their education. And we did the ropes courses, we did trust fall activity, we did all kinds of stuff. And so anyway, it was just a great place to, because it was small and I could try a lot of really cool, unusual things. And they gave me a pretty long leash. And so because of that, like I said, I taught there first. So I taught there 5 years before, I guess 3 years before I was the principal there. And so, yeah, that's when I transitioned to the principal. I was already a teacher at the school at that time.
That's beautiful. All right. I want to ask you a question that I ask all of my guests, which
Okay.
is the actionable item, right? It's wonderful that they listen and hopefully they're taking notes, learning from all of the various things that you've implemented on your campuses over the years. But if there's something they can do tomorrow or next week to enhance their leadership journey, what would you recommend?
Focus on the relationships in your building. I know that that's kind of broad, but I will just say this. y- y- That means your teachers, that means your parents, that's your students, that's your staff workers. My very first job in education, I was an aide. I was in, and I was making like I would work all day long, every day, just like everybody else. And my paycheck was like $576 a month. I'm like, man, I'm here all day long. But I was so excited. And I'm gonna tell you what, I wouldn't trade that for anything in this world, because I got to see education from the very piece of, of the person who's helping, and I now when I walk into an environment, I'm like, you know what? Every one of you matter. Every single one of you are a piece to this puzzle that some child in this building absolutely needs. And so, you build relationships with everybody, because you're going to live and die by those. I mean, you are absolutely going to live and die by those. And the reason I didn't have trouble with that 18-year-old who had done something where you're just like, oh gracious, are you a little afraid? I'm like, I'm not afraid of this child. Um, is because I took the time just to relate to them. Hey, and build those relationships. You know, if somebody's just scared of you, or if you only lead and children act like they're supposed to, or adults act like they're supposed to because they're kind of scared of you, the minute you round the corner, the fear's not there. I mean, they're only afraid of you if if you're right there. But if you have a relationship with them, they want to please. I don't want to let you down. That is what you want, and I don't want to let them down because I have a relationship with them too. And so I'm just going to say, if you're a leader right now and you are not focusing on relationships in your building, you're missing the whole point of the work. That's how you get all those other things to happen. That's how you get data to work. And that's how you get engagement and get teachers to do all these things. It's not manipulation, it's just relationships. And so I would just say, please go do that. Whatever you're doing, go build relationships today.
Yeah, it's a wonderful piece of advice. I was smiling and laughing because I also started as a paraprofessional in special education
Mm,
before getting my teaching license, and those were some of the most impactful days with some of those students. I actually
absolutely.
almost changed my teaching license to special education because it was such a beneficial experience. But I totally agree. Relationships with everyone in the building, everyone from, like you said, the custodian all the way up to your other administrators, your families, and your community. So with that, Layne, will you just share a little bit about how folks can connect with you? I've been flashing up your website as we've been
Okay.
talking, but in addition to the websites, is there somewhere that you tend
Yeah.
to go to for social media?
Yeah. I spend most of my time in LinkedIn. That makes me sound exciting, doesn't it? But I'm just going to say,
The
I like to
professional
write.
that you are.
Yes. I, I like to write. I put a lot of
Yeah.
articles out. So like I try to put some of this stuff that I've talked about today just even into articles, because when I was teaching, I taught writing. I love to write. So that's an easy place for me to just kind of put some things in. So I am on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place to get me because I check that literally every day. I'm on Facebook, but I don't do that a ton. So, but yeah, I'm definitely on Facebook, and I do put things on X. So you'll see some of my work. You'll see really kind of some of my work that I do. Probably put more of my state stuff up there than I do other stuff. But if you really want to follow and learn, I would say LinkedIn is the best place to go to find some stuff, and reach out because I always
Mhm.
answer. If somebody sends me a message, I'll always answer them.
Wonderful. And the website is lanedillard.com for those who are listening on audio formats. And I'll make sure that I have the websites and the links in the show notes for everyone to connect. And I know you said it doesn't sound very exciting, but I've actually met more folks and guests on this show through LinkedIn this last year than ever before. So I feel like more people are transitioning over there.
Yeah,
It's not just for business; it's for even educators and learning. So
absolutely.
love that space, and I'm so excited that I got to connect with you there, and also to have these conversations. In addition, both online and then now with this conversation today. And I just appreciate everything you're doing, not only at the state level, but then also all over this country. And I just am loving all of your initiatives that you're talking about, and I feel like you're just making a huge impact. So thank you so much for being on
Yeah.
Inspired to Lead.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much.